Yeah, so this is a really, I think, significant question and a shift in North Korea's thinking over the past few years, especially during the COVID era, where it's kind of pursued a policy of self-isolation. In July, Foreign Minister Choi Sun-ki sent letters to Donetsk and Luhansk to recognize their independence from Ukraine. I think that this is also particularly significant because it signals North Korea's show of solidarity with other countries that are seeking to break off from, the kind of post-war, Cold War, US-led liberal international order. So I think that is particularly symbolic in how we're thinking in this post-Cold War realignment of states, especially small states. So we're paying a lot of attention to Russia and China and what they're doing, but a lot of these smaller states on the periphery of these superpowers are having to make choices. And so North Korea, there's a natural fit, I think, to joining countries like or joining separatist movements in other countries as well, given its own history. Definitely. So we're seeing North Korea having to manage its difficult neighborhood. Certainly, COVID has really tamped down on North Korea's ability to conduct trade, whether licit or illicit, abroad. Many analysts say that COVID did what sanctions couldn't. It did sever a lot of these ties and prevent the inflow of currency into North Korea. So where is the commitment of potentially sending soldiers or other personnel is probably more symbolic than real. I think sending workers might be more reasonable. In fact, North Korea has had a track record of sending overseas workers abroad in 3-year terms, and it sends them to countries like Russia, Malaysia, Qatar, Ethiopia, Angola, Algeria, China, right? It's sent a lot of some numbers up to 100,000 of these workers abroad. Their labor wages are paid indirectly to them, meaning a lot of it is pocketed by the regime. So this sort of guest worker kind of program that North Korea has and operates abroad is in fact another way for the regime to make money. And I think that is something that does seem reasonable, especially given both North Korea's situation as well as the situations of Donetsk and Luhansk and their need for international cooperation and resources. President, conservative Yoon Suk-yeol, he entered office with the intentions to improve U.S. ties that had kind of stagnated over the past few years, bolster alliance cooperation in a variety of domains, not just military security domains, but further afield globally. He wanted to take a harder line approach to dealing with North Korea. So we're seeing a big shift right now. Is that I think that Yoon Suk-yeol's administration's biggest priority right now to address North Korea is not northward, it's not outward, but it's actually at home. So right now, Yoon Suk-yeol is facing abysmal approval ratings. He's only been in office for just over 2 months now. He also is facing opposition in the National Assembly, which is going to make a lot of his bigger policy decisions quite hard, particularly given that it's such a partisan issue in South Korea. When it does come to the situation on the peninsula, I think that Yoon has 2 options or 2 priorities that he needs to look for after handling the domestic situation at home. So first is the administration needs to develop a nuanced security and diplomatic strategy to induce further international pressure on North Korea. For the Yoon administration's most pressing and pragmatic concern is finding international cooperation to curtail North Korea's cyber operations. These have not only the capacity to disrupt international infrastructure, financial networks, banking, but importantly, they've also served as an important source of income for the regime that otherwise is so heavily sanctioned and self-isolated from the international economic system. These cyber operations are actually, I think, an area that all of the global community faces. It's a new and emerging a threat that we do need to work on, and I think North Korea, for many actors out of the region, are also highly concerned about. And that's I think something that the Yoon administration might find a lot of progress on. In the near term, I think that prospects are really dim. As I mentioned before, South Korea is really facing a difficult domestic political environment. Yoon Suk-yeol's difficulties at home make it pretty hard for him to reach out to North Korea in any way. I think that also and this is significant for both Seoul and Washington, the growing US-China strategic rivalry really brings a lot more attention to Northeast Asia and makes an unfavorable environment for any sort of diplomatic engagement, even, regardless of, any preconditions or lack thereof. Whether Pyongyang likes it or not, it needs Beijing's either tacit or explicit consent for engagement. Beijing is Pyongyang's largest trading partner, strategic partner, but their relationship, by the very nature of size and history, their relationship is asymmetric. And Pyongyang really does rely on Beijing for not only economic, diplomatic, security, in all of its domain. It really relies on that partnership with China. I think we also are seeing, as the superpowers of the world are shifting, North Korea is also, probably also going to reach out and rely on Moscow a bit. We've already seen that, like you mentioned, with the commitment of troops. And so North Korea does need bigger partners, regardless of any interest in South Korean and US engagement. Then secondly, on the part of the Biden administration, President Biden has a plethora of concerns at home that are much more, I think, pressing to the public and to, political elites. The Biden administration is also working on a much broader Indo-Pacific policy in which North Korea is only one and very difficult part. And traditionally, working on a North Korean issue requires such immense political will that I think the Biden administration probably won't seek to spend some political capital to work on an issue where Pyongyang isn't really interested and Seoul is really facing a lot of constraints of its own. So that's pretty pessimistic, but I think very pragmatic. The stars, I think, in the near term just aren't aligned for any sort of diplomatic engagement between the three countries.